Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 13 of the Terra Nova podcast. I'm here with my good friend Kelli Hastings, and she is here for the third time now. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. How are you today, my friend?
I am good. How are you? Thanks for having me back on.
Awesome. Yes. In this beautiful, awesome new studio you've created.
Yes, it's a work in progress, but it's awesome to have the soundboards up. And as you can see, there's some musical instruments around too. We use it for that purpose as well.
We'll leave everybody in suspense for the end when you get to play the fiddle, right?
Yes, I play the fiddle. I started as an adult. I'm by no means a master, but any adult that is thinking, it's too late, pick it up. It's so rewarding to try to learn an instrument, even, as we age. It can be very rewarding.
Yeah, that's a potent thing to say to me because I feel like I'm musically inclined, but definitely not confident enough on any instrument. Can pluck around on a guitar, can play a little percussion, but not confident at all. So I would actually need to kind of take a lesson or two.
Absolutely.
Or just, the funny thing is the older I get, the real thing I'm learning is I just need to practice more. I actually don't really need, especially with YouTube, I don't really need to take a lesson. I need to have the mental fortitude really and discipline to just do and take action.
I will say though, having a lesson, because I've been now with my teacher who's amazing, Sharon Hartman, amazing fiddle player, for I think it's going to be coming on 7 years. And before that I was on YouTube and I was doing stuff, and just having that weekly lesson keeps me in line a little bit more. It's a little bit more accountability. I feel like I should practice because I'm going to see Sharon. I don't want to waste it. Where I didn't have the self-discipline to make myself practice regularly, because you're right, practice is the absolute key. That's all it is. Right. I felt the same way. I felt like I had some musical inclination. I mean, the fiddle's super hard instrument to pick up and play because there's no frets compared to the banjo, which is here too, and the guitar. You have to find the notes, so it's not just
by ear. You
have to learn where they are. And so I'm still, like I said, learning and by no means great at it, but I'm glad that I've finally got to the point where I feel comfortable enough to play for you and maybe play for your listeners.
Yes.
If they're kind.
Yes. I'm born and raised in Florida. My mom is as well, but you're multi-generational?
Yes, I am third generation Floridian, and I've got a 13-year-old who is fourth generation Floridian.
And he plays instruments as well.
Yep. Yeah. They play keyboard and a little bit of banjo.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to stress to the listener. If you get to the end of this podcast, you're going to hear the sound of Florida. And in my humble opinion, it's just a really old-timey Florida sound. And when Kelli played for me earlier today before we recorded, I really felt like I was on the St. Johns River. It really is a nostalgic kind of takes me out of body almost to the past. It's not even something I would describe as reminding me of a point in my life, which is I find so captivating about music is there's so many instruments. The one that's at the top of my mind is the bagpipes.
Oh yeah, those are super hard to play.
Another version of this that's really kind of less complex, but also requires circular breathing and breath methods like the bagpipes is the didgeridoo, right? And both of those, I think universally people are you hear the didgeridoo, you're in it's 50,000 years ago and you're in the outback, and it takes you to this primordial place. You hear the bagpipes, the bagpipes kind of stir up grief and this sort of lost feeling, something that's maybe needing to be recovered or lost. It's played at a lot of funerals. Fiddle, I can't even put my finger on it. It reminds me of pioneering Florida and living off the land.
And there's a huge, not to get too deep into it, but there's a big Irish influence on old time music, and the tune I'll probably play at the end is an Irish tune. But that's what it was the Irish settlers that were then bringing the old time, sound to a lot of Irish tunes that they knew, and it's all influence. And then Florida really does have its own unique kind of Florida cracker sound that folky, scratchy sound.
It does. It's like a very southern bluegrass, kind of sound. Speaking of Irish people, I've been down this rabbit hole. It's a really good YouTube channel called Old World Florida.
Okay,
and
nice. I like Florida,
the name. Yeah, they explore just a lot about the Tocobaga Indians and how they're the original growers of tobacco, and like
Oh, cool. They're named after it.
Yeah, and they just explore deep into how maybe some of these mounds could be potentially, not burial mounds, but potentially like the foundation of a much larger, structure and civilization that just hasn't been excavated. And there's been some like pyramidal mounds found in Florida.
Pure metal?
Yeah, pyramidal.
Oh,
like,
middle.
Like in the shape of a pyramid.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, I don't know if that's
Pyramidal.
even...
No, that sounds like a word. I like that
word. Might be a fake
no,
word
like
that I just
pyramidal, like of the pyramids, of or relating to pyramids. I like it. I'm going to work that into...
related to a pyramid in
sense.
shape.
Gotcha. Okay, so not like mound shaped, but
right, because it has, 4 sides that are equilateral. And, like a lot of these pyramids in Mexico, that's exactly what they had found.
Okay.
But a couple hundred years ago. And then when we pull away the earth, we realize it's like, and so through LiDAR scans and stuff of Florida, they're finding a lot of ancient structures that just need to be explored. And one of the coolest like facts I've learned recently, because this guy, Dr. Narco Longo is his name. It's an alias, but yeah, this guy, Dr. Narco Longo, he explores widely the origins of Florida, and that people have been living here, like there were Celtic
yes,
mummies buried in bogs 6,000 years ago.
Here in Florida? Wow.
6,000.
Because Celtic is that's the musical influence that I'm speaking about.
So Europeans were in Florida 6,000 years ago, and this is like a fact, like just a standard.
That would have been like the 1300s or 6,000. No, it would have been before. Okay, before the Common Era. I'm going 600.
So this basically breaks like history.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
No,
okay.
And this is why Old World Florida really has like some wild information to share. And one of the craziest facts is that Columbus would have never found the New World without an Irishman was his navigator. And so, Dr. Narco Longo goes down this deep dive of the Irish are like the original seafarers. And, we all know the story of like Leif Erikson and the Vikings coming like in the 1100s, but little did we know that, 6,000 years ago, Europeans were seafarers and were coming all the way over here to the New World. And he goes, into the explanation of like, it's actually not ridiculous to think that the way the Gulf Stream goes around Ireland and keeps it the Emerald Isles and, keeps it from basically being ice. It keeps it warm, the way the Gulf Stream goes around it and hooks around it. That's how
they would follow that down to Florida.
Yeah, it would take a ship all the way down to Florida. And so, it's just kind of rewriting this narrative that maybe there were Europeans here for thousands of years, and that doesn't need to be so controversial.
No.
Especially if there's like anatomical evidence and they're finding mummified bodies that were buried in a bog, and that's how they like know.
That's crazy.
That it was a deliberate burial, and that's how they're preserved. It's pretty interesting. Down in South Florida, they were found actually.
I'm gonna have to look into that. Yeah, I like that. That's really cool.
Yeah. So, I have a list here of some interesting Florida topics I want to discuss with you. But, you're a big permaculture person, and that's obviously like what I do for work. So, I would love to discuss, just how we can grow year round here. And I feel like that's
we're so blessed in that way.
Totally. And sort of tying that back to Old World Florida, he actually says that the Garden of Eden is here.
Ooh, I'm getting goosebumps everything you're talking about Florida. I mean, I feel like the Garden of Eden is here. I love Florida. Love to travel, but I feel like Florida is my home.
There's 2 places. It's in the Big Bend.
Okay.
Up in Apalachicola.
Yeah, that
makes sense. And that's
makes
because there's this gopher wood, and that is what the ark was built out of.
Okay.
That's specifically what God said.
Noah's Ark?
Yeah, Noah's Ark.
Okay.
So there's all these, biblical things, but ultimately the real evidence is just that Tampa Bay is like the greatest natural bay in the world, and that the Fertile Crescent might actually be the entire Gulf of Mexico. That might be the Fertile Crescent. And also, the Nile is the St. John's. It's the only other river in the world that flows north.
Then the Nile, okay. And even...
It's just the Nile and the St. John's. So, like, he definitely has... It's just more of like a fun, like...
Well, it might be
exploration.
metaphorically and symbolically true, even if it's not historically true. I mean, this is like that. It is a Garden of Eden. That's why I got the goosebumps when you said it. Whether it's, you know, actually historically true or not doesn't really matter, because it is our Garden of Eden for sure. You know,
I mean, we both grow food year round, so
Yeah.
for us, we have our own gardens that are our personal Eden.
Exactly. That's what it means.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people in America are, in these last few strange years, seeking some sort of connection with, you know, sun and greenery and earth year round, you know?
Absolutely.
So they are like fleeing like refugees almost to Florida for our weather and for the healing of this state, right? And just as Florida natives, I kind of like want to remind everyone that, you know, Florida is such a raw and wild and beautiful place, and like, let's keep it that way, you know?
Yeah. It's hard when you know, the more people, then the more it gets built up, and you see these like forests being that used to be there, trees. There's so many trees even in my neighborhood that I saw in the last couple of years get cut down. It was like pain in the heart.
Well,
But
it is
certain
cool
areas-
that it is illegal in the city of Orlando to cut down an oak older than 50 years
Well, you know
old.
what happens though is if the city
Is,
comes around and says that there's any kind of disease,
Mhm.
like we had 2 trees in our front yard that's what they said, and they cut them down. And then one of my neighbors is an arborist, and he was like, "There's no disease in those trees. Like, they probably needed to come down because eventually they would have fallen or hit the telephone line, and they were older, but it happens." Or I mean, sometimes the trees age to a point that they have to come down, and it's still sad.
Yeah, it's difficult, I feel, to lose any old growth tree. And you know, Florida used to have a lot of old growth cypress, like some of the biggest trees in North America. There's a few big ones up in the Panhandle still. The biggest tree in Florida is in the Panhandle, actually. It's a cypress,
That's cool. Might have to take a trip to see it.
Yeah. No, I really want to see it. It's kind of hidden, but there's some people like that I follow on Instagram and stuff that have visited it and would probably share the location. Remember, there is a massive tree here locally. It's,
well, what's it called? The mayor, or the one over by the Science Center?
it's not that close. It's no, it's in the forest. It's called like the Sentinel tree, I think. The Senator tree.
The Senator, yeah, it's over by the Science Center.
It is?
I call them, I can never remember. I'm like, it's the something, some kind of political. It's the Senator, not the mayor.
Right.
But it's over by the Art History Museum and the Science Center, and it's hundreds, like 500 years old. It's cool. There's actually this thing that I did a few years ago with one of my friends. It's the bike tour of Orlando, and there's several really old trees within like a, I don't know, 10 or 15 mile radius that you can buy, maybe even smaller. Like we did a bunch of them in one day, and that was like the coup de grace, like the big one. But there's a lot just even in our little downtown area of trees that all have a little story. We downloaded it. It was just like a map, and you go around and check out the trees.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, like my roommate is from South Florida, and I think a lot of people feel like as soon as you get up here, that is the like kind of like the demarcation point, or like the difference, maybe you could say, between Central Florida and South Florida is old growth hardwood trees, you know, just like huge oaks and stuff. I notice as soon as I go like south of Sebastian especially, everything is just a lot younger until you get all the way down into like Fort Lauderdale, Miami. You get the huge ficuses and like the coconuts.
Homestead, I was going to say there's some cool old trees too.
Yeah, definitely. Just they're not like oaks per se.
No, more like citrus, or I mean there's even some really old like avocado and citrus and stuff like that down in Homestead. But no, citrus wasn't the word I was looking for, but more tropical. That's the word. Tropical type trees down there. Yeah,
the tropical line is Sebastian. That's where it becomes more tropical.
I gotcha.
Everything north of that, like there's basically like a freeze point, and it doesn't ever freeze, I guess, south of Sebastian. But you know, speaking of citrus, you have actually one of the best looking citrus trees I know of, and for those that aren't aware, like citrus isn't as easy to grow in Florida as it used to be. You know, there's been a blight and a lot of disease, and Kelli is growing her citrus like in a really proper fashion, I feel, as an understory tree under a lot of other large trees.
You know, that might be the whole key to it. I was reading an article about that, how they found that the citrus that was growing among the pines and oaks, like they found like a citrus patch in the forest, and it didn't have the greening, which is what everything else has. So the more we're able to plant in those types of symbiotic relationships, we might see or be able to combat greening or lessen it, because
Yeah.
I know it is such a blight on the citrus in Florida. And that tree does have a little greening. I mean, I think it's on everything. You're talking about the Lamorange tree, that one that we call it. It's like these really sour oranges and key limes, but it's they're really good for cooking with. And
I guess that's due to genetic drift, that the lemons have made the oranges more bitter and the oranges have made the lemons different.
No, the lemons are the same. They're basically key limes, and we could go on a whole tangent with that, because you're technically not supposed to call it a key lime when it is not in the keys. I think the technical name is a limequat, but they taste just like any limequat. I made a key lime pie over Thanksgiving. It was very tasty. But the other part of it, which wasn't ever supposed to fruit, that wasn't the intent of the original grafter. They were just trying to make the key lime stronger by grafting it to an existing tree so that it would fruit earlier. And then after several years, might have been like 8 years, all of a sudden the grafted part started to produce these oranges that tasted like key limes. But they're very hardy and they're really good for seasoning. I used to make mojo out of them. I did that one year for Christmas. I made everybody mojo, but they're not like, you wouldn't want to make like orange juice with them because they don't taste like orange.
Yeah, I've tried them.
Yeah, but they're good for cooking and seasoning and that type of thing. You could use them any way you could use a lemon or an orange. So I love when it's fruiting, because, and it does most of the year, but then I don't ever have to buy limes or lemons. I just go out to the yard and
I would love to see, like, in commercial food forestry take off out of necessity. What I mean is people have to plant. Every third tree will have to be something else if you want to grow citrus properly. Yeah. Because it just really can't grow in open sun in a giant field without. And people are doing this successfully again. They're growing, citrus groves and orchards that look beautiful by using huge amounts of pesticides. But they have to change this, concoction every few years. Because, they can't keep up with the greening. And then this is like, good Florida citrus, but it's really just covered in pesticides and the farthest thing from organic, Yeah. So yeah, it's hard to get organic citrus in Florida unless it's small batch, right? Like you have, or, in small little groves that people have surrounded by oaks. Specifically, it's oaks. The oak pollen.
Oaks. It's not pine. Okay.
It can be, I'm sure, a mixture of many, like in a forest. But
any kind of bigger tree that's going to provide it some protection, probably.
I've seen like 40-foot citrus trees in forests. Like, they're not high producing, they're not high yield, but all the oranges look nice,
Well, that's like, because I like to hike out in Wekiva a lot, and I'll see citrus trees mixed in with the oaks out there.
Yeah, it's, I guess, from birds pooping out seeds.
Yeah.
I love it.
Good stuff. And one thing that we have, which I don't know that I've shown you, but we've got that other citrus tree in the front that's the pink variegated lemons. Those are pretty dope.
I just was taking a video of it with your pigeon peas.
Oh yeah, you did. So you saw it. And it's just started fruiting, so it's not as prolific as the one in the backyard, but every year we're getting more. Because how it is, it's like something starts to fruit. Those pink variegated
lemons are really popular.
They're so tasty.
People are like really wanting that variety, so that'll be cool. If I could sprout those seeds, that'd be so cool.
Yeah, you probably could. It would just take several years to fruit, most likely. Yeah, that's what happens.
Most fruit trees don't fruit for 3 to 5 years.
Well, we find with the ones from seed, like at least with our avocado, I don't know if that is considered. I mean, that's not a citrus, but it's that tropical variety. It took like more than 10 years before it fruited. On the really low end, it would be like 7. But 10 years from seed sounds about right. That's isn't that a real investment? I love this quote that they say: "You don't plant fruit trees for your children, even you plant them for your grandchildren, because when the fruit tree is like overbearing with fruit, is actually it's
usually
even longer.
It's like 30 or 40 years. You have a mango that's like how many years?
I mean, our mango, I was gonna say that's probably, it's more of a generalization than a rule, because sometimes, who knows, like that mango, we got it when Emerson was 6 months old, and Emerson is now 13, so
that mango's 12 years.
Yeah, and it's been prolific for the last probably 5 years.
You have one of the biggest mango trees in Orlando.
Yeah,
I mean,
just,
really.
And I think part of it is we're just lucky. I don't know. We've got good soil, but it's like 50 feet tall, and we've had it trimmed more than once.
And it really is 50 feet tall. No exaggeration for anyone listening. I mean, this is a mango tree
hundreds of mangoes every season.
Hundreds of mangoes, and I've gotten a lot of those mangoes, and a lot of them you can't even get. They're just too high up. Like, how do you even?
The animals get them too. We have to share with nature.
You'd have to climb up with a 20-foot fruit picker.
They fall. I like to to let them get as ripe on the tree as possible, just because they taste so much better. But then, yeah, you have to share them with the squirrels and the rats and raccoons if they fall like in the morning. I mean, when it's fruiting, I'm like 3 times a day going out there just to see what's falling to try to get it before the animals.
They're like valuable jewels.
Yeah,
that's how I view them. And this year, the property I live on, there's like a 25-year-old keep mango, and it probably yielded like 150, 200 fruit, right?
Nice.
And about 50% of the canopy just got taken out by a big old oak falling and just decimating the tree and taking out a lot of its branches. So the tree's fine, but about 50% of it is gone, right? And when I saw that, of course, it made me very sad, but the reality that it won't fruit now for maybe a year or two, that set in, and realizing like, I don't want to live in regret or live in the past, but man, I should not have given away so many mangoes, like they were so much more valuable than I even knew.
Yeah.
And I didn't appreciate the impermanence of like, I'm eating mangoes off the property I live on, with a mango tree that has a taproot in like an aquifer fed lake. Like, these are some of the best, juiciest mangoes I've ever had, and not knowing that I won't probably, it might not flower. I feel this
it might take some time off.
A year at least, yeah. I feel like the tree would be wise to do that.
Yeah, it happens. Our avocado did that. It got a little bit of a shock a couple years ago, and it took a year off, and then this year it started fruiting again, and it wasn't as prolific as it had been, and I think next year it'll be back to norm. But
they're so intelligent. They know that they need to conserve their energy and vegetate, and that they can't give like the gifts, their fruits.
Yeah.
Because that would take too much energy from them. And if only people could
follow suit.
Yeah. I think I kind of am right now. I just gave a lot last month, so this month I'm obviously still giving as much of myself as I can, but not too much. I'm like very discerning on like how much energy can I output without getting sick, basically, without taking some sort of consequence, right? Biological cost.
Well, we have to rest, and it's hard with our society because it's so driven. It's so like go, 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 and get as much accomplished as you can, and part of that is sometimes just not doing anything so that you can allow things to happen and allow your body to rest and your mind and your soul. But it's kind of counter to the American or just Western culture in general.
It's an interesting segue into like my next question for you, which is, would you say that your intention behind being sovereign and being like a business owner and making your own money, and would you say your intention behind that entire momentum and endeavor of yours is spiritual well-being and ultimately like the ability to say, you know what, I need to rest because I can confidently say that's my reason,
I like that.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have a conscious reason other than it's just like, that is what Kelly wants to do. And I go in the third person there because it almost feels like it comes from outside of whatever this little ego self thinks it is. Like it's a directive, just this is what we have to do to be us, to really exist in this world the way that feels the most natural. Because when I have worked for other people in the past, and I've done plenty of that, there was just a lot of things I couldn't do. And so to be able to accomplish the things that I want to do, and part of that probably is rest, just being able to like on a Wednesday at noon do a podcast with you, which I couldn't do if I, had a 9 to 5.
Yes.
But it does take some time to get there. Like, you have to kind of look at your life and go, okay, what do I need to do to move things so that they can be where I want them to be, where I do have that sovereignty? Because you can't just necessarily do it with a snap of a finger. You have to kind of set things up. And
yes, it took me many years. And I think you were an example for me too, in seeing like, I like to live a little more like her. I like to live with a little more freedom and ability to like trust myself enough to enjoy my day, because that is something I've dealt with a lot this year, of just being locked in that mindset. Because I've been an employee at times this year, in the beginning of the year, still working for other people, but staying devoted to, I trust myself enough to manage my time, and I'm actually like doing good things with my time and energy. I don't need to necessarily sell 40 plus hours of my week to get a small amount of money just to like keep paying the bills and not, I also would love to purchase land, and I think we both share that goal, and I don't see how that's possible for me working for other people. The only way I can make real money and purchase land is by not being a wage slave at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I just can't be living that lifestyle if I want to actually make some serious money. So I feel like that would be motivating to a lot of young men to become entrepreneurs. It's like, if you actually want to achieve your dreams, how are you going to do it on like a salary?
Young people, right?
Yeah.
Both women too.
Yeah. Well, I feel
you
like
feel more.
I feel like I have
to the men.
Speak to like my reflection, but in terms of women, like, what would you say to like a young woman, like, that is in the workforce, working for other people, and wants to transition to maybe working for herself? I feel like for step one would maybe be working from home, getting a job where you work from home.
If you could do that. And there's nothing wrong with putting in some time working for someone else. If you've got sort of the goal of being on your own, then you can take baby steps toward that goal. You don't have to necessarily lament your existence or feel like you're trapped. Maybe even just saving some money you're putting aside, or transitioning to where you're working from home, or whatever you can do now. There's always some kind of step you can do now.
Right.
The first step, and that might not be the ultimate goal, but the universe really likes that. I cringed when I said that word. I had a little bit of a cringe because sometimes I feel like it gets too new agey, but whatever you want to call it, this existence that we're in likes to see us take baby steps. Maybe it's our highest self that's sort of orchestrating this thing, but we don't necessarily have to know what the end goal specifically is. We can have kind of an idea of what it is, and then just take some action every day, even if it's small.
Yes.
And not necessarily because even for me, like, it's funny because you look at me and you're like, wow, this is this life I want to emulate, and I'm not 100% where I want to be. Like, I want to buy land, and I've been saving money toward that goal, and I can now see that's going to probably happen in the next year or two. Took a long time to get there.
And I know that you'll manifest that. Like,
yes.
I actually, so many people say this to me, right? But you're one of the few people where I know, like, you have the conviction and the follow through to manifest if that's your real desire, which it is. It sounds like you really want land, so you'll actually have it. You'll make that a reality, and so much respect for holding that vibration. I feel I carry that vibration too. It'll just be more like when I'm a few more years, as long as I'm singularly focused, I know it'll be mine. If I shift my focus and decide, no, I'll settle being a homeowner, yada yada, then I'll lose it. But no, I'll build a home. I want land because I really want the space.
To grow. I mean, gosh, to grow. And sometimes you have to make the hard choices. Right. Like I recently closed down my business because I felt like it was taking away from that dream of owning the land, because I was having to put so much time into this thing. Although it was this beautiful place, it wasn't my dharma exactly. It wasn't my dream. And so, I mean,
it's how we met, actually.
Yeah, it was through Total Zen Float.
Yeah.
Which may come about in some other form in the future.
And you healed a lot of people by managing that place for so many years. I mean, not managing it, owning it, and managing it, and all the difficulties of that. So I just want to share that with you, if no one has yet, that you've actually been a crucial person in how many people's healing. I mean,
that's nice
hundreds.
To say.
I mean, maybe 1,000+ people have come through there, right?
I mean, we have like 6,000 on our customer list. Right. Not everybody's been there.
But let's say in the past few years since you've owned it,
a couple thousand at least, I would say.
You do have to. I feel we all have to learn how to master recognizing ourselves. Like, I really feel God has been telling me this recently. How to recognize yourself authentically without inflating yourself. Because for me, I don't want to inflate you as my friend, but I also want to give you recognition. How do you give that to yourself too?
Yeah, it's hard.
Because you've done a great thing running that place. Like, that really, like, saintly work, Especially
and that's
from a business
and it was so hard to give up, and I think a lot of people don't understand. But from my perspective, I'm giving it up, and then there's going to be an even better place for people to heal and exist, and it's going to be more in line with my passion. Because I do eventually plan to have another place where people can float, but also have retreat space and a food forest and yoga and classes, and to continue to put time and attention and energy into this thing that just wasn't quite coming together the right way. It's hard to make that decision, first of all, because you could just kind of coast along in your life doing the same thing forever.
Right.
And sometimes you have to make that hard decision. At the same time, if you're really tuned into yourself, like I just knew that's what I had to do. Like there was no question inside me, even though it was hard and I knew it was going to be hard for other people. The little voice inside me was like, we have got to let this go so that something bigger can grow, something even better can flourish. And it's hard when you're in this period like I'm in right now where that thing doesn't exist yet. And it probably won't for at least a year or two, maybe longer.
You're like pregnant with the idea.
Yes, exactly. And trusting that idea, even though you had something real that you had to kind of let go of for this amorphous thing.
Right.
But trusting that.
And pregnancies, can obviously fail and be miscarriages. So it's sort of like trusting that you're a good container, you're a good womb for this idea to come to fruition. And I really see that, if anyone's going to purchase land and build like a healing center, it's probably going to be you, because you've already ran a healing center. You have a life partner that is a great builder. Yeah, so good at like just making things and constructing things, and that would be a huge hurdle, is hiring out, just a lot of contractors and just a huge general contractor to take over building. Whereas Rob will actually take care of that. Like,
he could do a lot of it.
I think he's basically a general contractor.
He really is, and he is getting his licensure and everything. He's working on it, not that specifically, but his other contracting licensure. But I don't want to put it all on him either. But just having that type of resource, to have a partner who's just so capable in that way, it really helps. Even if you end up hiring other people to do things, he's sort of overseeing everything, and he'd be like, "Nope, that's not how we want it."
Exactly.
And we can make sure it's the best. And it can be a slow process.
Which gives you the confidence and conviction to bring it to fruition too.
Yeah.
Because I'm already feeling very uncomfortable talking to general contractors. Just because I'm getting over my head, and what am I even agreeing to? I'm the one giving the green light for them to go ahead with what. I don't even know if this is right. Whereas the ball is rolling because you have somebody standing beside you, right next to you, saying, "Yeah, let's go forward with this." Partnership is key, I think, in bringing big visions to fruition.
Having people that you trust that are on the same page as you are.
Share the same vision.
Yeah.
I mean, where I live, I just rent, but it's a nice piece of property, maybe like under an acre, with like some goats and like a lot of gardens and stuff. But without a roommate like Raphael, I would not really be able to manage it all. Like we're growing like a lot of food now. I just put in a new garden, so there's probably like 5 or 6 raised beds, and then there's this huge pumpkin patch area and a big area that is now a food forest that used to have like a bougainvillea and like a large mango, and I literally couldn't water it all every day by myself. Like, I mean, I could, but it'd be like an hour out of my day. So I have another neighbor who waters the gardens too, and just reminding everybody that, sovereignty does not imply singularity.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
It implies like we're all independent as possible, and therefore we're able to be interdependent. Because I'm not going to be interdependent with anyone that's a dependent.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
You see?
Yes.
So I don't want to get lost in the wordplay with people, but there's this whole concept of codependency, as people know, and in order to avoid any kind of codependent relationship, you can really only rely on and make deep partnership with other sovereign beings. I think that's the key.
Yeah, that is the key.
And that's what I find attractive in friends and lovers and whatever. And I don't know, I kind of see the same thing in you. I think you kind of, see in people, are you sovereign, are you not? And that determines, maybe how you perceive
the level of
connection.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the right word. That's probably it or close to it. Versus you wouldn't want to partner or, collaborate with people that didn't have that sense of sovereignty in some way.
Right.
Because it could affect whatever you're trying to create. Like, I feel it.
Yeah, I know that you do. I mean, I've watched you learn that.
Yeah, it is a learning experience. And that's something, kind of bringing back to what you said. What advice would you have? It is a learning experience, all of it. And so it's okay to start where you are, even if that's maybe not this perfect existence. Maybe you do have a job where you have to go to an office or whatever, but there's still little things you can do. Like we were saying, saving or even just starting to plant, like growing microgreens and jars in your windowsill. Like it doesn't have to be this heaviness that you're not doing what you want. And for me, even though I was starting to say to you, even though I look so sovereign, there's still like parts of my life that I'm like, other than just the land, like I still have a big law client because I'm an attorney, and I would love if I was financially independent enough that I didn't have to do legal work for pay, because it's not my passion, but it pays very well. You know, I excel at it, but it's not my dream, my passion to do, but it is what enables me to be able to do the things that I do. And so, you know, I was like kind of complaining or something to someone, I think my acupuncturist, I was saying something like, well, you know, I do have to do 20 hours a week. I'm doing this legal writing. But she's like, well, what's your typical day? And I'm like, well, you know, I logged on, I did some legal writing for an hour, and then I ran to the post office, and then I dropped off some microgreens, and then I came home and took the dogs for a walk. And she's like, so you're like semi-retired? And I'm like, no, but like it did give me some perspective on my life. I'm like, dang, I really do have it good. I shouldn't be so like bummed that I have to like do a little legal writing.
That's one perspective from somebody that's maybe, you know, no offense to her, but just a little more in the matrix.
Yeah.
Right? From someone that's sovereign like yourself, I will say, listen to the feeling that you
absolutely,
that you don't really enjoy doing that, and that will fuel, you know, your vision, right?
Absolutely.
And that's kind of the beauty of doing anything we don't want to do. If I had not worked for other people doing dead-end jobs for like 10 years, I would have never like even had the ability to kind of gesticulate, you know, an idea. I don't even know what the word is. Like, it wouldn't have fermented, and I would not have become, for the lack of a, you know, the term, pregnant with the idea of grow your own Florida, unless it was born out of necessity almost. You know, I just was like, I am unhappy working for other people. Like, it just does not make me happy. You know, I have vision and I have the ability to communicate. Well, I can manifest this, you know? And so I think, shoot, if you don't like doing any legal work at all, then...
No. Well, and I won't. And let's take a step back. My plan is not to, and I won't have to do it forever. But also, you can't lament where you are, and when you have obligations, and right where I am right now, I have to do that a little bit. Forever, no. Maybe only for another year. But when I heard her say that, it just made it a lot easier to do the work. It became more enjoyable, because it is where I am right now, and it pays very well, and I need that money to be able to save to buy the land, you know, and so it's a means to an end. And every job I've had working for other people has taught me something about myself. Like, I couldn't have just started at age 22 and been like completely sovereign and, you know, had my own business. Like, to some extent, you have to go through life and do what's in front of you, understanding that you're not stuck there. But you can't do it and be so upset with having to do it that it then becomes a chore, because that is not going to be healthy either. You know, the Bhagavad Gita talks about acting without attachment to the fruits of action. Well, I was acting, you know, doing lawyer work and being attached to this idea that it had to be a certain way and that I didn't want to do it. And so I had to just kind of give that away. Like, this is where I'm karmically at right now. So I have to let go and just be in the moment and not be attached to what comes, but know that I'm making small steps every day where this is not my future forever. It just became easier when I had some perspective on it.
Very well said. You kind of answered so well. I don't even know really what to ask you next. I was going to ask you, how would you relieve sort of the burden of, you know, where you at for where you want to be, you know, and like, how do you hold on to the vision, right? When you're not there yet, because that's really my question.
Yeah.
Let me make it more personal and speak from the I am place. Like, I am someone who has been to a lot of friends' farms and seen a lot of people's land, and really see myself owning land. I need, you know, 6 figures probably. Really.
Do you?
I mean,
I don't think
I would like 10 acres, and I probably need like a $20,000 down payment, you know.
So you need $20,000.
I need $20,000, but I need to
That's
make
5 figures, right?
Right. I need to make 6 figures. That's what I'm really saying.
Oh, yearly, to be able to pay the mortgage
to be able
on
to
a
just
20,000.
begin to save and pay that mortgage. Yes.
I got you.
So the route that I've charted for myself to get there is make my business successful by 30, which is in 3 years for me. I'm 27. And then by 33, 6 years from now, I'll have that money. Like, you know, like, I'll actually have a flourishing business and liquid 20 grand, 30 grand
Yeah.
to put as the down payment so that my mortgage is really nice. That's what I'm trying to set up, is I don't want to just put the minimum down payment and have a crazy mortgage. Also, my family might be interested in being involved.
Yeah.
There's other ways to manifest this and
absolutely.
get there, but I also want to be very sovereign and kind of want to have it all in my own name, and not have any other issues with that. So for me, it's kind of like a waiting game. Like, it's just, I have to hold on to this vision, just singularly, that if I want land and I need to make a certain amount of money to purchase that land, the only way for me to get there, I personally feel, is by growing a business. Of course, I'm open to whatever God would like to give me, but the business grows as much as it grows, and it's grown incredibly for me this year. But just any advice for someone that has a big vision, but in reality, I do feel it's years away, and I'm not even trying to constrain myself by that. I'm being conservative with my vision. I know that God could drop a lottery ticket in my lap.
Yeah, it could happen tomorrow for in some bizarre way.
Yep. Or someone could just gift me land somehow. Like, I'm open to that. Someone saying, I have this land that's not being used. You have a great vision. I'll lease it to you.
Something like that could happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And having space for those possibilities helps open things up karmically, I feel. But I think on a day-to-day level, and this I've even learned and has really been driven home recently, it's just being present with every single thing you do. So I sit down on the computer to log in and do some legal writing. It's not my favorite thing to do, but I just get into it and I feel my body, and I'm here, and I'm realizing that this is partly what's going to enable me to do the things I want to do. And I try to treat every moment of it like a spiritual practice, and just every moment to bring that word pregnant back again. It's like pregnant with divinity and the vision, rather than being in the future, constantly thinking of the future and like, I just have to get through this till I can get to this other point in the future. That's not what's going to do it. I felt like things have moved faster since I've just completely embraced where I am. I think it's important to see how you can take small steps every day toward your dream, even if that's just doing things that maybe aren't your favorite, but that you can find some way of enjoying to do in the moment, knowing that the money that it's going to generate is going to help with your vision. Even that can be something like, you're in a job you don't like, but you know that you can save a little or do whatever. Then that's a baby step. But whatever other baby steps, writing a business plan, investigating some loan information, or whatever you can do to make it clear to the bigger picture, the self, the universe, God, that you're really wanting to do this, and that you're willing to do it for the long haul and take those steps every day.
I mean, I don't have the liquidity. It's not realistic for me to purchase land right now, but that being said, I think the best thing I can really do is just look, and since the subject that we're talking about is purchasing land, I mean, manifesting your vision can be as easy as just becoming obsessed with the subject.
And having your thought on it, but not at the same time being where you are and being okay with it, even though it might not be exactly where you want to end up, and not like I was getting where I would sit down to do some legal work and almost like to tears that I didn't want to do it when I didn't have the perspective on it, and didn't just realize this is all part of the divine play. Like, this is where I am. And a lot of people, like my acupuncturist, making that statement about, you sound semi-retired. I'm like, a lot of people would look at my life and really be like, whoa, you're so lucky. And here I am, to tears about it, when it's like, so blessed. So, it's a work in progress. You're always creating it. And you have to go through those little things. Like, I had horrible jobs at big law firms, but I've learned so much through each of those steps. I wouldn't change any of it looking back. And at the time, maybe I was like, oh, this is the worst job, but like, there's just things that you learn, life lessons, and even if not work lessons, dealing with other people. And
I think that there's two things I want to say. That times in my life when I've been struggling with doing mundane tasks.
Yes, mundane. That's exactly
to
what we're
achieve
talking about.
A greater vision.
Yeah.
The only thing that gets me through it, is remembering the vision. So I like how, redefining the vision and meditating on it basically is what can motivate you to get through the things you got to do in a day. That, you know, sort of your dharma. It helps you to get through your dharma for the greater end goal, you know. And
there's this practice in the Bhagavad Gita of you know, sacrificing everything to whatever your concept of divinity is. But literally everything you do becomes a sacrifice. So even sitting down at your mundane job becomes a sacrifice, where you're sacrificing the fruit, like whatever comes from it, you're not attached to. So you even just the mental game of when you sit down to do it, going, this is for you, whatever my concept of the divine is, and then doing it, it just changes it.
It's fascinating, right? This concept of work. Like, I was thinking about your acupuncturist and how she's a healer, but that's still a job and that's still work, right? I wouldn't really call it like a matrix job, right? But she's, you know, it's work, and she's not retired, right?
Well, but I think she's living it a lot better than a lot of people too.
She's got a great quality of life,
and she owns her own business. And
there you go. Yeah. And then you're talking about yourself, and you're saying, you know, I still have to do things I don't want to do. Right, and that is legal work. That's your example. And for me, you know, I'm thinking for myself, what is it for me? And it's probably like hard labor, you know, just moving like this last big install I did, I had to move 60 yards of mulch, so 3 20-yard loads, and then 20 yards of soil that was really wet. And, you know, I didn't have any heavy machinery, and it's just like, it just will take days to do with multiple guys too. And, you know, what is it about these tasks? Like, let's kind of drill in.
Okay, I like this.
You know, like, what is it about these tasks that we would call makes them work? You know, and why does God have us doing them?
Yeah.
You know, because we all are doing something that we feel is necessary, but it's in line with our dharma, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's not like we're doing something that we find misaligned with
or bad, or like hurting other people.
But we still just don't love it.
We just don't want to do it, maybe.
Right. And there's and I would love to have like a bobcat, you know, a skid steer. A bobcat just like, I could do it in a day by myself. But I'm not there in my business yet. For you, you know, you would like to eventually graduate, maybe is a good word, from legal work.
Yeah, I don't want to do it at all for money.
Right.
Because I really do it for money.
But maybe in a different timeline, or maybe even a few years ago, you had like a temp or somebody doing it for you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. There's a way to do this. I think for healers, it's very interesting, right? I know a lot of chiropractors, I know a lot of massage therapists and acupuncturists. It's really a labor of love. They're really giving their energy.
Yeah.
And especially massage therapists. Wow, are they tired?
Yeah, that's what.
Why are they tired at the end of the day?
Takes it out of you.
And they're tired on like a spiritual level too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder if maybe the healing arts might be like one of the purest examples of like the finest line between work and you're doing your job and living your dharma and helping people, because there's an energetic exchange, and every healer feels, you know, usually not necessarily like we're charged by the experience. I would say it's fair to say most healers feel there's an energetic exchange. That's why they're being paid for their art, you know. So maybe, you know, you and I aren't healers in a traditional sense, but we are in our energy, you know. I think people find our presence healing, you know. So what would you say in regards to the subject of like what makes something work, and what makes what makes healing someone something that, you know, we can only do to a certain degree, you know?
Yeah, until we start to feel like we need to rest or do something else. Yeah. And the question, what is work, is such a question of semantics in a lot of way, or what is the word work connote to some people versus, you know, what it means to others. Because spiritually, like I keep going back to the Bhagavad Gita, because that is just, you know, my love. I love that book as just the quintessential spiritual wisdom. But anything is work. Basically everything can be work, but you don't want to be attached to the fruits of the work. That's how it becomes a spiritual practice. So you're encouraged to work, to perform action, or karma yoga is the yoga of action or work, but you do it without a desire for what is going to come of it. So even though we do work and we think we're doing this for money, we're also just doing it in the moment and sacrificing it to whatever the universe has for us, because we could drop dead, you know, the next day, and then you don't realize the fruits of the work. You're not doing it specifically for the fruits, or you're not attached to the fruit, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So then everything becomes work, and that you can't even not work until you've been perfected in karma yoga, and then you become a yani, you know? We could go there.
Right.
And that doesn't
Right.
even happen until you've perfected karma yoga, because you've become so integrated that no work is actually work, because you're not attached to the fruits of it.
Very good. Very, very good answer. Yeah, I would say I see all of those dimensions in myself, and I oscillate between them. You know, being a young man that has some level of wisdom but is still a young man. Like, I go between doing this work, and then I come back into this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, and if I joyously do this, it has spiritual value for me, and it's actually a transcendental spiritual practice, whatever
Yes,
you're
it
doing, any
is.
tasks, right? So I want to share maybe with the listener, like, you know, and with you, an anecdote that really was coming through while you were speaking. Like, it just came through right now, and it's this old adage of chopping wood and carrying water.
Yes, the
that
Buddhist
Buddhist
principle,
adage.
yeah.
I was thinking to myself, well, I'm sure there's so many young Buddhist, you know, boys and girls that are like, what a silly thing, chopping wood and carrying water. Someone's going to do it. You know, like, if I don't do it, it'll get done, kind of thing. Like, you got to keep the fire going. You got to keep, you know, water boiling and this whole thing, right? So someone in the village will chop the wood and carry the water. So what's the point of me doing it, right?
Gotcha.
People get in this mindset, and I think a lot of people get in this mindset with mundane work. And I know I do. It's like, anybody could do this, so why do I have to do it?
Yeah.
You know, or this is beneath me, this sort of mindset. You know, chopping wood and carrying water is the Buddhist example because it's heavy and difficult, and you got to do it every day. And what I would come back to is that the joy of chopping wood and carrying water is the joy of your body working.
Yes.
You know, you're grateful, and a lot of people won't learn this unless they're blessed with wisdom or with sickness. But
when you were talking, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but when you before were talking about your mundane work that you dislike is the hard labor, that thought actually popped in my head that you're partly doing it for your body, because
Yeah.
your body can really get into doing that type of thing, and it wants to move and work
Exactly.
and lift. And
that's where I was going with this in a long-winded way, is that, you know, the chopping wood and carrying water has no value to the young man that's never been really sick. You know, it's only when he's healthy again that he finds the joy in swinging that axe
Yeah.
and carrying that pail of water, because, you know, you feel the vigor and the life force back in your body, and you're happy to serve and you're happy to give. And every psychedelic experience I've ever had that's really worth something, I come back from it with that vigor, you know, of like, oh, I just had my face rubbed in the transcendental other, you know, I just saw God and my hair went white, and I'm just happy to be alive and just here
happy to be here. Do whatever you want me to do today.
Yep, just
What's on the
like,
agenda
Lord,
today?
like, just send me where you need me, type of thing, because I just want to serve and be helpful. Because, you know, near-death experiences have the same result for a lot of people. They just are just sort of thrilled to be here, and I would like to share that message with anyone listening, is that, you know, that's the value of the work, is that we are human, and part of being human is just doing these mundane tasks.
Yeah.
It seems, and, you know, maybe in our life through AI and stuff, like, we'll lose a lot of these mundane tasks, and, you know, it'll be so funny. It's already happening. People go right now to do like workouts in the woods, and, you know, some of those workouts include chopping wood and carrying water. Do you know what I'm saying? People are seeking it out.
They want it.
Not because they need to do it at all. Like, you know, it's just because they miss that connection, you know.
To nature and your body, and
Yep.
the presence of mind that it takes to chop wood, because you have to be totally there to do it correctly, or else you could
It's sort
hurt
of
somebody
dangerous,
or hurt yourself.
Yeah. I saw a funny meme the other day, and it was like, you wake up from a fever dream saying it's the year, you know, 2023, but it's actually 1722 and you have to go labor all day in the fields from sunup to sundown, and you realize in that moment you couldn't be happier.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, like, is that not so true about the modern age? Like, if I woke up, like, if this was all a dream and I woke up as a peasant, like, would I be so
in order
upset?
to live, you had to work for 12 hours just to make sure you had food for the day. And
and does that sound terrible to some people? Because it does, but to some people it sounds great.
I mean, it doesn't sound that terrible to me, to be honest.
No, it doesn't. It sounds awesome to me, to be honest.
But, you know, I think there's a blend, because to have the technology we have, and we both sort of have this dream to kind of go back to that with our food forests and land, but we're also going to have the benefit of the modern age and the technology, so that we're not going to have to slave away for 12 hours or worry about famine and that type of thing. You know, we'll have the benefit of both, but you have to have both. You can't throw away the past for the future, because that's why everybody now, like you're saying, they're going back to the woods, you know, back to nature, back to growing.
Yeah, like some people say we're being civilized to death, you know, and that, like, you know, you see all these images of the ape evolving into man, and then the man becomes fat and evolves. You know, I would not say that's necessarily the trajectory that we're on as a human race. It seems that there's a lot of people who are not benefiting from society. You know, they're actually getting sicker and dying earlier.
Yeah.
But then there is a sector of society, and it's not necessarily the elite. It's not necessarily the more privileged people. It's the people who are blessed enough with the wisdom, really, just the inner knowing to kind of utilize this time and age, you know. Well, it's the difference between people using the internet to their advantage and not, really. It's like, are you watching a bunch of trash on YouTube, or are you watching educational stuff that's, like, you know, increasing your health, increasing your knowledge? It's really just, and a lot of this is karmic, you know. It's it's
true.
what you're interested in, and we live in a time where everything is being amplified, you know, like the end of the world, I really feel, is happening now, but it's implying the new earth. You know, it's
the
like,
end of the old world.
Right. But it's really, like, my understanding of consciousness is that unless we are going to watch on screens, at least, or in real time, the destruction of, like, a country, there's no reason to bring about peace. You know, like, one, it really implies the other. You know, like, as war breaks out and famine spreads, people realize we really need to focus on food security and creating peace in our nation, you know. And this is just how consciousness is. So if anything, we're in a great transition time, and it's like, what do we want to pay attention to? And, you know, how can we view, like, our work as aligned, you know, and where we need to be? I would love to give people advice on that aren't entrepreneurs or sovereign, but
well, you can do it even if you're not. I mean, even if maybe you enjoy the benefits that come from having a steady job with a paycheck, you know what it's going to be every week with benefits, and that's okay too. But the same type of mentality can be brought to it of, I am not attached to the fruits of this work. Everything is a sacrifice. And then it becomes your spiritual practice. I mean, I'm of the belief that the whole reason we're here is to evolve as humans, to realize ourself as the one self, right? So everything that happens can be part of that. Everything that's happening in the world is part of that. So the main thing we have to do is work on ourselves. And some people would criticize that as too individualistic, too Western, because, you know, you lack this need for other people. But it's not that, because part of it is community and socializing with other people. Like if I do, or when I have this yoga retreat space, I want to have all kinds of people come in. So it's not completely individualistic, but at the end of the day, you're the only one that is going with you. You know, like everybody else around you eventually will be gone, because we all die. There's not anybody you can take with you, nobody who's going to be in your life forever, no thing that's going to be in your life forever. So you're it. And so what are we doing with our time, even if, or it always is, not even if, because it always is in some things beyond our control. None of us can control every aspect of our day-to-day life, but we can control ourselves and our mind, and we can use everything that happens as fodder for spiritual practice. And that's all we can control. And when we do that, our life gets better day by day, small ways, and we become happier. And, you know, you used the word you used before when you were talking about doing mundane tasks, and you said, I want to find a way to enjoy it. And I don't even know that that'd be great. I mean, enjoying it would be awesome. But even if it's just a state of surrender to it, where there's a lack of resistance to it, because maybe it's not that enjoyable, or maybe it's too hard to find the joy in it. Well, but you can find the surrender. Like for some people, I mean, you could find it in some things, but
I think I'd like to find the joy in the presence with it. Because I definitely access the joy in it. Podcasts and working out. Those are my hacks. You know, this is my workout. I'm just my back and I'm sweating so hard, and you know,
you're listening to podcasts while you're doing it and you're working out.
And I'm working out.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of how I bypass the straight up struggle of moving soil and mulch for like 3 or 4 hours in the middle of a hot day, right? But what I'd really like to do is hack into like the monk level of like no music.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying this. This is what I set up for myself. It's not like I'm even working for anyone other than myself. So that's really interesting, is to have different, and I know this is inside of you too. You have a boss inside of you. You have, you know, I don't know if it's that stratified. For me, it is sometimes, where there's literally like a CEO in my head that is the representative of the company and doing the quotes. Then there's the boss and the manager. Then I'm also my own employee.
You're the employee
doing
and
the
labor.
Work, yeah. And sometimes I'll relieve myself more from being like the employee when I have a couple other guys, because I'll realize like I'm not really telling anybody any directions. So everyone's just kind of like, I don't even know what to do. So it's learning how to play these roles, you know, artistically, and having fun with it, but also like just embracing digging holes.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of the work. A lot of like some of the hardest days I've ever had is like you plant 12 45-gallon trees. That's 12 like 60 plus gallon holes. And that's just like digging ditches, you know? And how do you find the joy in that? You're impregnating Mother Earth. That's like how I've done it. As I'm like, this is a 5-year-old tree that's been growing in a pot, you know? And if I don't do this right, this 5-year-old tree like won't be a good transplant, you know? And then Mother Earth won't take it, and it just won't work out.
Won't be viable.
So there's ways to view hard labor, you know, like if you're digging coal, you know, that's a hard one, right? That's pretty bad for your health. So how do you justify that? How do you say, you know, this hard labor is good, you know? And I think the way you justify it and the way these guys justify it is my family is good. And I love my family.
They're providing.
So that's like the ultimate hack for a man or a woman. It doesn't matter the gender, right? Is that you're providing. Now, how do we, in this matrix system, how do we find out how to provide ethically? You know.
Yeah, because
right?
hopefully we get away from the need for coal, but we still need people doing it in the time for the time being, and you don't want to demean them or make them feel bad for doing the work that society needs.
I think the best anecdote I could share is Paul Rosalie is one of the biggest conservationists in the world, was on Joe Rogan recently. He's conserved like tens of thousands of acres of the Amazon. And he does not demonize the very people destroying it.
Well, they're just laborers at someone else's behest.
He actually goes and, you know, has almost even been killed by these loggers, and he goes and he speaks to the people who are feeding their families in poverty in the Amazon, cutting it down and burning it. And he goes and they see that he doesn't hate them, and that he's a white man that doesn't look at them as inferior. And he comes and he says, you know, you come work for me, I'll pay you $25,000, you know, a year, and they're getting so much less.
Yeah.
And he pays them much more. And what happens is these men have such a change of heart, you know, that they become providers for the forest instead of just providers for their family, raping the forest, really, you know, just completely decimating it. They are able to step into their divine masculine role, and he gives them that opportunity.
That's amazing.
And they're now protectors of the forest, and they're so much more passionate. And I think that's such a clear example of like, how do we, you know, kind of shift like the human spirit, because the human spirit is so beautiful, you know, we just want to provide for our families at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that's used, you know, that need and that desire is used to do some pretty wild things, you know, in this world, you know.
For true.
Yeah. So let me see what else I got here.
Yeah, how are we on time?
We are pushing just over an hour, so I would like for you to play.
But maybe you'd forget.
Yeah, I think If you wanna
No,
do
I
it,
will.
if you don't wanna do it, it's
No,
okay.
I would love to.
Yeah. I think the only thing I have left here is, we could discuss cannabis.
Well, we could always discuss cannabis.
Yeah, always. So yeah, I mean, I love the herb and I've grown it a lot and enjoyed it heavily, and I feel like it has a crucial role in my life. But I'm more interested in your relationship.
Well, we were talking about it a little bit before
Yeah.
we went on air, and I'm kind of at this place where I have drastically reduced my cannabis consumption lately. At least the THC heavy varieties, I do enjoy some. I found this place. Actually, I should give them a shout out because they're awesome. Secret Nature online, and they make organic CBD flower that's beautiful.
Organic.
Flower. Oh yeah, organically grown, beautiful, and it just doesn't have. It has less than 0.3% THC, so it's not psychoactive in the same way. And I still like that. And I still like THC now and then. It's just, what happened was basically I got sick with COVID a month or so ago, and I couldn't smoke anything.
I was seeing you through that whole sickness, not even knowing you had COVID.
It was, well, you could tell by my attitude a little bit, because it's one of those things like you were saying, when you have sickness, then you appreciate your body's ability to do things.
Oh, you're like a diamond right now. Yeah, your consciousness is so clear.
It was rough being so sick. Like it's good to go through that so that you remember how other people sometimes feel. Like when you see someone and maybe they're in a bad mood or something, you're like, you don't know anything about what's going on with that person, and we do take health for granted. That's a side note. Back to the weed. But I wasn't able to use it, and I don't actually smoke. I vape flower. That's been my preferred method of ingesting for many years, and I couldn't even do that just because I was so sick. So nothing for like 3 weeks. And then when I did vape some flower after being sick, I just got so high basically, and felt cloudy headed for several days. And I just realized at the place I'm at in my life and spiritual practice right now that cannabis was becoming more of a hindrance than a help. That is not to say that it doesn't help people, and it's helped me so much in my own spiritual practice many times. So I think it's just we evolve and we things change. But at the place I'm at in my spiritual practice, which a lot of it is this tireless, that word comes to mind, practice of sacrificing everything all day long to the divine and just mentally remembering that, I'm a lot more able to do that without the THC heavy weed. And that's the nature of my spiritual practice.
Let's hear that part one more time for everybody. One more time, let's hear that part.
So
what is easier specifically without cannabis in your life for you to do, sacrificing to the divine?
Well, it's this just mental practice of remembering that all work is a sacrifice to the divine, and that so having the mental clarity to be able to bring that up constantly, ceaselessly, because that's where I am in my practice right now until I get to the point where I'm firmly established in it. So the mental remembering is easier when I'm clear-headed, and my sleep's been better and other things. And I would never be down on it because it's done so much for me, and it's such a healing plant that's been demonized for too long, and it's ridiculous because it's such a great healing medicine. It's just been nice to have some clarity to my life. Without it, that it came by accident. I don't know that I would have stopped doing it,
right,
but because I was sick, then it helped me to kind of step back. And then when I introduced it again, it just didn't agree with me in the same way.
That's very profound, Yeah, part of me wishes for liberation at times from cannabis. Another part of me takes breaks for 3 days and couldn't miss it more.
Yeah.
She's just like my guru, my teacher.
Yeah.
And it is something to do with, like, I could speak on quite a deep level about it. For me, it's something to do with this earth and being like, I don't know, maybe my sign being Taurus. Like, I really struggle feeling like good here,
Yeah, cannabis helps with that.
Really helps me.
It does. It helps me with that. It's helped me with that for many years.
And maybe it's because we've been in higher realms or we're sensitive souls or whatever, but I distinctly remember when I started my relationship with cannabis over a decade ago, I'm like 16 or 17 getting really into it, right? And now I'm 27, and it was like I found the key.
Yeah, this is the hack to
the
make me live.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel it.
That was like the thing that was wrong with me or whatever.
Mm.
And you know, I probably, if I was less strong of a spirit or maybe less like intelligent, I probably would have been heavily medicated my whole childhood. But every time some therapist would try some weird thing, I'd be like, you can absolutely get away from me, you know.
Yeah.
So self-medicating with cannabis
Yeah, it was the same for me.
helped me like be in the world.
Well, and I mean, I'm almost 20 years older than you, so maybe when you're my age, that will happen to you with cannabis too.
I'll graduate.
Yeah, and it's not even because.
No, I do feel like it's a graduation for you. Like I see, like you're like a diamond crest jewel of consciousness right now. You know, I don't know if that's COVID. I don't know if it's the lack of cannabis, but you're really, really sharp and bright right now. And it's interesting to like, you know, when I saw you when you were sick, like I know you well enough to be like, yo, this is not like your vibe, you know. And now to see you back in your energy, I think that's such an interesting thing to actually like embrace. Like how do we right, this is what I'm trying to say, how do we remember when the sickness befalls us? Because this is, I try not to fall into the spiritual pit, you know, but when the sickness befalls me, I say, okay, because you can barely remember, it's like a little whisper. I say, okay, this will actually make me better somehow. And then you're like, really, how is this gonna make me better? Like feeling this sick, but it does, and you come out so much more clear. Every sickness I've gotten, and I was sick for like 24 hours recently, really, really sick. It was the weird thing where last week it went down 30 degrees and up.
Oh, yeah,
you know, that temperature fluctuation.
Yeah.
But since I work outdoors a lot, somehow I turned over really quick, and I remember thinking like, dude, I can't function. How am I going to get this work done? You know, just it immediately becomes an existential thing for me, and I'd like to come back to that, just kind of come full circle. I think that the deepest value for me, working for myself, being an entrepreneur, being sovereign, is that I'm able to finally like say when I'm not feeling well, it's okay.
Yeah, just be okay with it.
It's okay. Whereas I deeply remember working for other people, and you'd be like, damn, I called in sick 2 weeks ago and I wasn't, just to take the day off, and now I am sick.
Yeah.
And now when I call in, they're gonna be pissed, and that stress keeps you sick. So then you miss way more work. And I just really remember it snowballing into full on anxiety, where I would just be like, I'm not allowed to be on.
Yeah, I can't be sick.
Yep.
That's part of that Western mentality of, you know, drive forward and work even if you're not feeling it. And we've got to step away from that. I think your generation is, in a lot of ways, they're not the same mentality as people my age, where we just had it. We were just kind of would push through more. Where you guys, and even younger, my kids' age would be, you know, 13. They're just like, no, I'm not going to do it. You know, like.
Yeah. It's wild that is viewed very much as weakness, but like honestly,
it takes strength.
It's just that easy. Like you just don't, like the world would literally adapt around.
Yeah, it has to. And
just
why is it better to be the other way? It's not. We're unhealthy.
Yeah.
We're, you know, sick. We've got metabolic diseases.
Yeah. I mean, I think the concern is that maybe the entrepreneurial spirit, that sort of like drive to make something of yourself, will be lost. You know, if people are just like, I just need my basic needs met, like whatever.
Yeah.
You know, because I do see that a lot, and you know, I'm a millennial. I'm at the very end of being a millennial, born in 1996. So I, you know, see maybe in like post 2000, that generation, like, do they want to own land? You know, like maybe that dream dies with me. Maybe it's being reborn
I think
with the new generation.
They're not going to work in the same way we do. And I'm kind of the opposite. Like, I'm right at the end of Gen X. Like, I'm technically, there's this subgeneration. You could say Zennial. Like, if you're born between like 1976 and 1983, it's like this weird subset where, unlike other Gen Xers, we had computers and internet, you know, as part of our childhood, but we weren't born with it. So we were born with, you know, the old-fashioned TV and not having internet, but when we were still very young, we had access to it. So it's still like a different mentality than what I'm seeing with the really young kids, like the Gen Zs or Gen Alpha. I don't necessarily think that they won't have any drive. It's just going to be different.
Yeah, I mean, I think my only concern is, in this sense, so archaic, and I could kind of delve deeply into this, but like the iPad kid generation, like I don't know, like I do notice a marked difference between, you know, I actually didn't even have, like, there wasn't a PC in the house till I was like 10 or 12,
Yeah.
you know, type of thing. So for me,
too.
I'm gonna like unschool my children. Like, I'm gonna not
might
just
have
homeschool them, I'm gonna unschool them
I mean,
because
we're at kind of that cusp with Emerson where
Mhm.
it's like he's still in the system, they're still in the system, but it's
it's really tough with him because he's about to go into high school, right? So
yeah.
if he, like, that's what I've always said when my parents challenged me about homeschooling. I said, no, I'm gonna homeschool them and unschool them, and then I'm gonna send them to high school, and then I'm gonna throw them in the world. And if they hate it and they're like, this is the pit of hell, then I'm gonna be like, yeah, come back. So you see what I mean? And then I won't put them in high school. But like, that's such a hard choice because that's the deep socializing.
Yeah.
That's what they're gonna basically. I remember in high school, like, every year was like so ridiculously different than the year before. You know what I mean? Like, you're morphing.
A lot
You're
of
basically,
growing and
yeah.
changing
You don't
happening.
even have a form in high school.'re just like
Amorphous blob.
You just are like constant. You think you have a music taste that changes the next week.
So true. My
Like,
musical
literally,
taste
my
changed
clothing
every year.
style would change per quarter.
Yeah.
4
I
times
was
in
like
a
that
year.
too.
It's so funny too how seriously you take yourself.
Oh yeah,
too.
so serious for true.
Yeah.
So what
So
do we think? Are we picking up the
if you
fiddle?
would like to,
Oh yeah.
if you're in the mood,
We
you
could
know.
always cut this part out, right?
Yeah. So anybody that wants to hear some old Florida sound, tune in now.
All right. Take a deep breath. Maybe I shouldn't get so
Yeah.
close to the mic. I'll play a scale first.
What do you
Okay,
play?
I'm gonna play out of just the scale, G scale, but I'm gonna play King of the Fairies, which is actually like a Celtic tune, but it definitely has some
Sounds
old
a little
Florida
like
vibes.
a pirate sound.
Yeah, it does have a little of that because it's an E minor.
Bravo! I like it.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
First time I think I've ever done that. Played potentially to hundreds of people. I don't know.
feel like I was sent back in time.
Were you?
Yeah, instruments are like time traveling
Yeah.
devices.
And fiddle, it's been around for so long.
So long.
It's fun.
So long.
Cool. Thanks for giving me that opportunity.
Yeah, one question for you.
Yeah.
I'm a crazy vegan, so I have to ask, what I've heard something about, is this cat guts?
The only animal part, and no animals were actually harmed, is that the hair is horsehair.
Horsehair, that's
But
it.
the horses are not harmed in the harvesting
So
of their hair.
this is not cat
No,
intestines.
no.
Somebody
no,
once
no.
told me that.
No,
so
these are
stupid.
synthetic strains.
Right. You know, I had to ask.
I'm playing like a dead animal. Like,
I think the joke is that it sounds like a cat.
yeah, it does. It
Yeah.
always, and that when I started as an adult, I've been playing. I think it'll be 7 years this January, and I'm definitely not a pro or anything, but I enjoy playing, and I'm starting to get where it sounds much better. But when I first started playing, Rob and Emerson would always pick on me, and they'd be like. Screaming like a cat. I'd be like, stop, I'm trying to learn.
They're so funny.
Yeah.
That's like the purpose of family.
Yeah,
We're supposed
totally.
to roast each other. There's such an art to it though. Like I would, my family is real harsh. Like
Yeah.
we burn each other when we roast each other. But yeah, we should all learn to be nicer.
Well, I have some childhood trauma from music stuff too, because it wasn't really encouraged, but you got to pick it up as an adult. You can't use that as an excuse for your whole life. Like I picked up fiddle in my late 30s, and it's very rewarding. I'll just say. I know I said that at the beginning. We'll bring that full circle. That don't let age be a deterrent. It's just enjoyable to practice and slowly get better over time. Even though it is a lot of work and a lot of time to put in to really excel at an instrument.
I really love that. Good encouragement.
Well, music, it is divine. Like it is such a connect. It's a meditation to play, and
God, I listen to music 3 to 6 hours a day. Just all day, every day, and that's why I just have to produce it on some level someday. Yeah. Like I know that is a deep calling for my life.
We could.
So I just want to share like how much I appreciate what you said.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
I can't really communicate it that well, but it means something to me because in my heart, like I know I have to become more skilled at an instrument, or even just record my voice one day. Over some cool beats.
And
just
cool.
Fruity Loops. Sounds editing software or whatever that's called.
Yeah, just don't be discouraged because you waited too long, I guess would be my advice, because it's never too late to try it.
Yeah, I would expand my encouragement to everybody out a little further, and just like sometimes when I'm building gardens and planting things, I'll be like, is this art? Just create. Like anything creative is art,
Yeah.
Because after a long day of working, quote unquote, out in nature and ripping up the earth and planting things, I will not feel like I want to do anything artistic. Forgetting that I was just creating art. It was just, on a different scale, and it was not like, it wasn't what you would call fine art.
Well, art, your existence, yourself, your body is art. And
your
presence
is the highest art.
Yeah.
I actually feel presence is the most neglected in the West art. And the highest art, and the art we all worship the most in actors and actresses, right?
Yes,
because they're like so present with their role, And,
so true.
Or artists, right? What is the main complaint if you go see someone perform live? Like, if they were drunk or they weren't present, right? Like they're just like
it seemed off, or
right? Like they weren't like in their role of like performer, So. Do the best job performing your role of being you, whatever
exactly.
that looks like.
Be you.
I want to give you the opportunity to plug.
Oh yeah, so it's funny. I mentioned the Bhagavad Gita several times, and I do have a free course on my website, and you can find me everywhere as the Yoga Lawyer. I'm on Instagram as the Yoga Lawyer. So there's links in my bio to that free course, and you can just use the code FREECOURSE ! And that'll be totally free. And I think if you use the link in my bio on Instagram, it's free anyway. And then I also offer a teacher training, a 200-hour yoga teacher apprenticeship that's completely online, self-paced, not your typical yoga teacher training, because it's not asana focused. It's more about like the type of things we were discussing today, the deeper practices of yoga, integrating it into your life. But because it is Yoga Alliance certified, we do cover asana pretty thoroughly, and even anatomy and physiology, but it's completely self-paced. You can spend as much time doing it as you like, and you get personal one-on-one sessions with me, and then we have support through Facebook groups and online classes. So you can use code half off, anybody who's listening, to get 50% off the
that's a great deal.
Yeah, I want to get more people involved and offer it for the beginning of the year. I know everybody's kind of has that resolve to.
So to be clear with anyone listening, if you're trying to become RYT 200-hour
yoga teacher certified,
so if you want to have in your bio on LinkedIn, Indeed, Instagram, whatever, that you're certified to teach 200 hours, like this would be a modality to get that certification.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you could do it on your own time,
right?
Because it's
and then you
self-paced.
Could have this on your resume applying to teach at yoga studios as well.
Absolutely.
So I just want to encourage like the practicality of that. This is actually a great deal, so everybody should do that. And Kelli's a really high yogi who has like a much deeper experiential understanding of yoga. She not only practices it, she lives it, and then she's also, which is very key, been to India multiple times.
Yes, I've spent about 6 months in India studying yoga over the course of like 3 years.
There you go. So you've immersed yourself in the culture.
I have.
Yeah.
Love it.
All right.
But you can do it right here too. Like, you know, that's the thing that's great about yoga is that it's wherever you are. So
Right.
if you can't make that trip, that's okay.
Well, it's beautiful that a teacher is here sharing, you know, what she's immersed herself in.
Yeah.
That's what I find, you know, to be attractive about any teacher of mine going and getting it from the source culture. You know, it's just that they're giving it to me in a very pure form. So I don't maybe need to go.
Yeah, there you go. You don't have
Yeah,
to. Your India, your cave can be right here.
Exactly.
Orlando.
And you know, the lineage and the transmission can come purely, you know, from someone who has come there and or has been there, like yourself. And you know, so everybody check out the Yoga Lawyer on Instagram. She's a great friend of mine, great permaculturist and yogi. And thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again. Third time. I loved it.
Yes, third time's a charm. Yes.
13th episode. Lucky 13.
Lucky 13. I like that number too. You know that there's 13 lunations in a year.
Yeah, 13 on the lunar calendars, 13 months.
Right. All original, you know, calendars from original
13.
cultures were 13. So we can nerd out on that.
Yeah,
for
totally.
Another few minutes, but we'll let you all go. Namaste, everyone. Thank you.
Peace.